Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Winter, and welcome to the review type thing for Doom 3, the BFG edition. This is a follow up on the checking out episode that I did, I believe, at this point last week. I could be wrong on that, maybe a couple of weeks. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused on the timeline at the moment. But I've since finished the game, and I thought I would offer some final thoughts on it. Real quick, straight off the bat, since this is the BFG edition, it does come with the classic Doom 1 and 2 and the expansion packs for Doom 3, Resurrection of Evil, and the BFG edition exclusive, The Lost Missions. So just to kind of get this out of the way, I have checked out Doom 1 and 2. I played about 4 or 5 levels out of each one, and they seem to be perfectly fine ports of the original Doom 1 and 2. So if you're looking to pick this up to play those, and only those, you're good to go. I didn't encounter any bugs or anything like that, and no graphical glitches, no audio glitches. Perfect transfers, and the gameplay is classic Doom. So if you're a fan, you're going to enjoy those. I have not checked out the Lost Mission yet, so I'm not going to be going in depth on that, and I've only played about an hour and a half of Resurrection of Evil at this point. So we're just going to focus primarily on the main campaign of Doom 3, which I enjoyed. I thought it was pretty good. It's got some negative aspects. It's got some good aspects. We'll go ahead and get the good aspects out of the way. The audio design is fucking excellent. One of the best sound designs I've ever seen for a video game. From the ambient noise to, hearing creatures just off screen kind of gurgling and making all sorts of nasty, disgusting, fleshy, dripping sounds. It's perfect. It's fucking awesome. The guns sound great. I really enjoyed the sound effect for the plasma rifle for some reason. I don't know why. I got a real kick out of that. I'd like to know how they came up with that sound. A little bit strange to get fixated on that, isn't it? But it sounded great. It looks good too. The characters look a little bit like they're made out of plastic or rubber or something, like I mentioned in my checking out episode, and that doesn't get any better as you go through the game, but it's perfectly fine. I mean, shit, this game is 13 years old at this point? Over that? Maybe 14, 15? I don't know. It's a fairly old game. For its time, it was pretty good and heralded as a graphical achievement, and I can see why. The environments look really, really good. And the lighting effect is fucking awesome. It's got some of the best lighting I've ever seen in a video game, too. It really sets the tone for the adventure that you're going through in this game and maintains it throughout. So that's fucking awesome. And I can see why it got all the praise that it did back in the day, and rightfully so. It still does that better now than some games that I have played since. And I'm a pretty big survival horror fan. I like my Silent Hill. I play the shit out of those games. And this out Silent Hill in the lighting department, which is pretty important for a horror game. You need to establish that atmosphere and tone and maintain it if you want to keep people on the edge of their seats or worried about what might be around the next corner. It works very well. It's very effective. Very awesome. The music, well, there's not really a whole lot to it. You can kind of hear in the background maybe. I don't know, it seems to be muted here on the main menu for some reason. But if you can hear it, there's only that main Doom 3 theme. That's the only piece of music I can recall hearing. You hear it here on the main menu, and then you hear it in the ending credits, and that's it. Everything else is just ambient sounds and sounds of the UAC facility, heavy machinery operating, computer banks beeping and booping and whatever. And it's pretty good. I actually enjoyed the fact that they just stuck with ambient sound instead of having a full-on sort of traditional orchestral score played over the visuals that you're seeing. I think it really helps to keep you in the mindset of, again, staying on the edge of your seat and being concerned about what's around the next corner or what's down the darkened corridor that you're getting ready to go down. Because traditionally in a scary movie, for example, you would hear the villain's theme sometimes before you would see the monster or the bad guy or whatever. And there's a little bit, it kind of takes away the anticipation because you know what's getting ready to come up. And Doom 3 doesn't do that. So that's fucking awesome. I dig how they did that. What else can I say that's good about it? Well, the level design is fucking awesome. I mean, as an electrician, I've been in several data centers myself, and I can picture the UAC facility that ID designed and presented to us here actually existing. But from the ones I've been in, this is like, fuck, man. You know, how did they do their research? How many data centers did they go to? Because it is a scientific research facility. And granted, I haven't been in too many of those. But I've been around a lot of buildings that did nothing but store computer banks and serve as basically a big IT building. If you've never been in a data center before, that's the only way I can think to describe them to make them kind of understandable. But it's pretty good. I can actually picture this building operating and being real. It's pretty fucking amazing, actually. And it's a lot of fun to explore as well. There's multi levels most of the time. You know, you're going to take an elevator up from the first floor to the second floor. And when you get to the second floor, it fucking matches what it should. You know, things line up where they should for the first floor. It's very well made. The negative aspects, well, I've got quite a few of those. First off, let me get this out of the way. I'm not a fan of shooters. You know, I played the hell out of them back when I was a teenager, but as I've grown older, I just don't really get into them for some reason. So take these next few things that I say with that knowledge and treat it however you will. I won't stop you. Everybody can interpret it however. But that's my full disclosure, little disclaimer bit. The combat is pretty good for a shooter. It's basically, you know, put your crosshair on the enemy and hit the R1 button to fire your gun. Nothing really dramatic or complicated about it. That being said, there's a lot of cheap ambush situations that you'll go through in this game. You'll go down this dark corridor and there won't be anything in front of you, and then all of a sudden excuse me, then all of a sudden you're taking damage from behind, turn around, and there's about 2 or 3 enemies that just showed up out of nowhere. And normally, I wouldn't complain about this, except normally, whenever an enemy spawns into a room, the room will turn red, you know, the lighting goes red, you'll hear a demonic laugh, and then some lightning comes down from the ceiling, and then bam, the enemies suddenly appeared on top of a flaming pentagram on the floor. Very cool. But these cheap shots, sometimes these monsters come out of literally nowhere, with no warning whatsoever, totally catch you off guard, and that's fine for about, 2 or 3 hours, and then after that, it just gets annoying, and that happens a lot in this game. It took me about 11 hours to beat this game, and I was perfectly fine with the first 4.5 hours. I was having fun, I was enjoying it, and then the cheap shots kept coming, and there's one level in particular where if you enter a room or just go down any corridor whatsoever, you might as well walk into the motherfucker backward, because that's the only time you're going to encounter enemies is when they try coming up behind you. It's a little bit cheap. I can see why they went that way, though, because it's all about, keeping the player on edge and paying attention to the surroundings and whatnot. I don't know. For me, it just got annoying after a few hours. And not to mention, there are several incidents where you'll open a door and there's an enemy crouched on the ground who leaps at you and does damage as soon as the door is open, giving you no time whatsoever to get your crosshair lined up on him and pull off a shot. So you'll take damage automatically, and it feels a little bit cheap. Again, I was okay with it for the first half of the game, but as we got into the second half of the game, yeah, I kind of lost patience with that shit. It stopped being fun and just became annoying. Oh, what else? The boss battles leave a little bit to be desired. They're really far and few between. It's not really until you get towards the end of the game that boss battles come into play. And by boss battles, I don't mean them slowly introducing a new enemy type or anything like that. I mean a one-off boss. And it's essentially the same thing. Just shoot it as much as you can and then move on. Which there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It would have been nice if they had if they had split those over like every 2 hours, for example, then you face a boss. If they'd been spread out a little bit more, I think I would have been okay with them. I didn't mind them as it is. It would have been a lot nicer to have them be a little bit more frequent and kind of break up the gameplay. And speaking of breaking up the gameplay, late in the game, almost near the end, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes a few platforming segments, which are cool, don't get me wrong, but those would have been nice to have sprinkled throughout the main campaign as well, and not just held back towards the end. And one of them I actually got a real kick out of, because I don't know if anybody else has played Tomb Raider Anniversary, But in Tomb Raider Anniversary, there's a level called the Great Pyramid where you have to descend up this long shaft on platforms that retract into the wall and whatnot. Well, that segment exists in Doom 3, only you're going down the shaft, not coming up the shaft. But the platforms retract into the wall, and you've got to time your jumps and all that shit. I got a kick out of that. I mean, Doom 3 came first, so I'm not going to say that they tried and rip off Tomb Raider or anything like that. No, far from it. I got a kick out of it. But it would have been nice to have a little bit of more variance to the gameplay. So if those could have been spread out a little bit more, that would have been appreciated. By the time I got to those sections, I was so pissed off at all the cheap shots that I was taking. I just wasn't in the fucking mood for platforming all of a sudden. You know, I mean, this is not a platforming game. It's an FPS. Now, I'm all for an FPS bringing in other game elements like a platforming. Just don't hold the good shit until the end. Because it can be potentially very frustrating. It's not an easy section, the one that I'm thinking of, the shaft. You gotta really be careful with your jumps there, but whatever. The lighting can kind of work against you. The BFG edition comes with a flashlight that you can keep on all the time when you've got your weapon raised. In the PC and Xbox, original Xbox release of Doom 3, you had to lower your weapon to raise your flashlight, and then I think you could use it as a melee weapon if you wanted to, but it probably didn't do much damage. You know, I'm okay with the flashlight being left on full time, but the problem is, I think it does kind of ruin the atmosphere by giving you that option. But that's totally on me or you. That's not the game designer's fault that you choose to use an optional item in your inventory. So, in regards to the weapons, what's interesting about this game is you've got all these different weapons. You've got your pistol, your shotgun, your submachine gun, so to speak, your chain gun, your rocket launcher, your plasma gun, your BFG, chainsaw, and all the firearms, with the exception of the pistol and the BFG and the rocket launcher, seem to do the same amount of damage. Like, there's no real difference between using the shotgun and the submachine gun, for example, in terms of how fast you can take an enemy down. Which is a little bit strange to me, because you would think one would be slightly more powerful than the other. And it kind of begs the question, like, well, why did they even throw all these different guns in if they're all just going to do the same amount of damage? I mean, the shotgun is absolutely fantastic for close range, but yeah, there really isn't that much difference between them. It's just a little bit strange to me. Later on in the game, you're introduced to the Soul Cube, which is fucking awesome. It's a weapon that you can pick up, and as you kill 5 enemies, you charge it, you let it go, and then it flies through the air and seems to target the most powerful enemy in the room at the moment, and will one-hit kill them and refill your health with their soul. It's a badass weapon, and it would have been nice to get my hands on that a little bit earlier in the campaign as well. In terms of enemies, I like the designs of them. I think there's some really good monsters in here. And some of them I'd never seen before in a Doom game, so I can only assume that not everything is a rework of previous monsters. The spiders were fucking annoying, man. If you've played this game, you know what I'm talking about. Those little bastards, man. Didn't enjoy them. And with regards to the combat and the enemies, what's kind of funny is these enemies will hit you. Like, let's say that there's a specific soldier type that runs around and has like a tentacle for an arm, and he can whip that thing out like a bullwhip or something like that and hit you with it and do a little bit of damage, you know. Well, the thing with the enemies in the combat is whenever you take damage from an enemy, you'll get knocked back a little bit, your perspective will shift, and your crosshair will move off of your target, and it just kind of knocks you back just for a split second, and you have to regain your composure, and then you can fire again and shit like that. But when you do that to them, when you either hit them with your fist or shoot them with a weapon, they're perfectly fine. They stay stationary, their shots keep ringing true. But goddamn, if they do it to you, you'll fucking miss every single time if you're in the middle of firing when they hit you. That's pretty annoying as well. I don't know if I want to call it cheap, but it feels a little bit unbalanced maybe. And I played this on easy mode, so I can't even imagine playing this on the hardest difficulty setting. When I did my checking out episode initially, because the one that you guys have seen was like my second attempt to record it, thanks to some severe weather we were having at the time, I did try it on veteran difficulty, and I got my ass handed to me just by the fucking zombies. So I can't even imagine trying to go through this game on that difficulty and getting to the enemies that have rocket launchers mounted on their shoulders and the guys that can fire plasma guns or chain guns and shit like that. Can't imagine that. But not a fan of shooters. If I was a fan of shooters, I'd probably enjoy it. In fact, I'd probably love every little single thing about this game if I was a hardcore fan of shooters. But I'm not. Another good thing that I do want to mention before I wrap this thing up is the sections where you go to hell were fucking awesome. Hell looks amazing. I mean, it's not a place that I want to go, don't get me wrong. But for a level in a video game, Jesus Christ, that environment was gorgeous. And it was so cool the way that the walls would suddenly rip apart like something from a nightmare or something. You know, they would just suddenly the stone wall crumbles and the blocks fade away and there's a demon standing behind there. And it was really cool, really well done. I wish that would have been in the game more too. I don't think there was enough time spent in hell, but that's me, you know. And I like things of a dark and disturbing nature. So you tell me, hey, you want to play a video game that takes place in hell? Well, fuck yeah, sign me up. I'm good to go, you know. So PDA collecting was interesting. As you go through the game, you collect PDAs from scientists and soldiers that are now dead. Some of them contain audio logs and emails about just day-to-day activity on the Mars facility, kind of fill out the backstory. And then some of them have security codes for things like storage lockers where you can find ammunition, armor, and health packs and things like that. You know, it was okay. It got a little bit annoying having to go through PDAs for security codes for lockers after a while. See, every negative thing I have to say about this game is nothing game-breaking. Everything is just little annoyances. Little things that over time add up and, for me, detracted from the overall experience. That being said, though, I would play it again, but I wouldn't play it as long as I did. Because when I played it initially, I did the first hour, which you guys have seen, and then I played it another 2.5 hours after I was done recording. And then after that, I could only handle maybe, you know, an hour and a half at a time. I couldn't marathon this thing. Like, you know, again, it took me 11 hours to complete. I couldn't just wake up one morning and think, right, that's it. That's all I'm going to do today. And throw a pot of coffee on and just sit down and for 11 hours never get off my ass and just marathon this thing. No, I couldn't do that. Everything would just get to me. It gets very annoying after a while, and sometimes you just need a break from it, you know? I did, at least. But that's me. And again, I'm not a hardcore shooter fan. Resurrection of Evil, I'll touch on that a little bit since I have played an hour and a half of that. It seems to be fairly different from the main campaign. Obviously, it takes place in the same facility with the same enemies and whatnot, but there are a couple of new mechanics, like there's a grappling gun, which isn't as cool as it sounds, or it isn't what it sounds like, I guess I should say. It's more like the gravity gun from Half-Life 2. And in fact, I think Half-Life 2 came out just a little bit before Doom 3 initially. I could be wrong on that. It's somewhere pretty close to the same time frame, though. But that's a lot of fun to play with, man. I wish that gun had been in the main campaign. But whatever. And there seems to be some new enemy types introduced. Boss battles seem to be a little bit spread out more. And overall, I'm enjoying Resurrection of Evil so far. The problem I'm having with it, and it's just a personal thing, is I started playing it about an hour after I finished the main campaign of Doom 3, so I'm going to have to take some time away from this fucking game before I play Resurrection of Evil again. I mean, it's well made, don't get me wrong, but I'm not in the fucking mood right now. So, you know, but again, not a fan of shooters, so take everything I've said for what it's worth. That being said, though, I do recommend this game. I really enjoyed it. It just got annoying after a while. You know, for me, when I think of a shooter and a horror game shooter, I suppose you could say, I don't really think of swarms of enemies coming at you like in the original Dooms and indeed in the new Doom. You know, that's not scary to me. What's scary to me is the more up-close and personal attacks that you go through in Doom 3. And none of them were scary to me, but they potentially could be for someone. And granted, you know, I think they weren't scary to me because, like I said, survival horror is my jam. You know, I'm always got survival horror games in stock if you're in the neighborhood and looking to play. So maybe I'm just a little bit jaded from playing so many. And maybe my expectations were a little bit too high, but it wasn't scary. And I think they really were trying to make this one the scary Doom. You know, the atmosphere is fucking great, and they establish it early on, and they maintain it throughout, man. There's not a beat lost in the whole momentum of it. It just wasn't scary for me. But I did enjoy it, and I do recommend it. If you like shooters, you'll probably fucking love it. And even if you don't like shooters, if you want something that isn't as hectic as, say, an original Doom game, you know, Doom 1 or 2, you know, it's got a pretty laid-back pace compared to those two. So I welcome that. You know, that's perfect for someone like me that isn't a fan of shooters. So I can only assume it would be perfect for someone else that has the same preferences. Though I could be wrong on that, that's just my opinion. That's been my take, and we're coming up on the 20-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and shut the fuck up and just close it with, I enjoyed it. It just got very fucking annoying after a while. Follow up on Doom 3, BFG Edition, PlayStation 3 version. There you go. See you on the next one.